Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Sustainable Conversations. My name is Olivia Hart and I'm the senior researcher for our Global Green Guide. And in the first part of my conversation with Burges Salmon today, I'll be speaking with the head of the firm's environment and water practices, as well as the head of ESG, Mike Barlow, on supporting clients in their net zero and ESG journeys. Mike is a very experienced environmental and regulatory lawyer and acts for clients in both the private and public sectors in both contentious and non-contentious work. He has substantial experience of running cases in criminal courts, environmental tribunals, and civil courts up to the Supreme Court. On the non-contentious side, Mike has particular expertise in energy efficiency, contaminated land, and environmental permitting, but has advised on a broad range of topics over the last 25 years. Mike is a former editor of the Environmental Law Review, and he regularly lectures on environmental law and contributes to articles in environmental journals. So thank you so much for joining me today. And without further ado, I think I'll just jump into the first question we have. So how has the government commitment to net zero by 2050 affected the legal sector?
Oh, well, thanks, Olivia, and lovely to be here, and a great question to kick off with. I think the first thing that I would say about the government commitment to net zero is it's unlike other policy commitments because it is actually a hard-edged legal requirement on the government to deliver net zero by 2050. So it was a change to the Climate Change Act. So it's hard-edged, and of course it is a commitment to get to net zero by 2050. So it's a long period of time, and there's a whole mechanism in place to make sure that that happens. And the Climate Change Committee has modelled how, as a country, we can get to net zero by 2050. So there is a roadmap there. There's still a lot of uncertainty as to how we get there. But I think what is really clear from that modelling is that this huge, wide-ranging obligation is going to impact on everybody: public sector, private sector, us as individuals, and across the board in a whole range of sectors. So at the legal sector, we have to respond to that. And we very quickly set up a net zero services group across the firm, focusing on 4 key sectors, which were energy, transport, built environment, and food, farming and land, which happened to be, luckily for us, sectors that we were really strong in. And that group does sort of 2 things, really. One is we educate the firm on what net zero might mean for them. And quite interesting, talking to one partner, having gone through it, he said, "Oh, I understand now, we're all net zero lawyers now." And I think that's probably is the mindset that we need to get into as the legal sector. We all need to understand this. So that's one area that the group does. And then the second thing is looking at the work for clients that would need to happen to deliver that. We look at driving the agenda forward. So both how we can help clients, but also how we can move it forward in terms of policy, regulation, and general awareness amongst clients. So I think a really significant impact, certainly on our work, and I think going forward on the whole of the legal sector.
Thank you. And what opportunities does net zero and ESG offer for law firms in supporting their clients?
Well, I suppose following on from my previous answer, it's incredibly broad. And I think just standing back a second and looking at ESG separately from net zero, because they're connected, but they're obviously different. ESG is a really wide agenda, and we have a lot of clients grappling with that. And as you mentioned, I'm head of our ESG group. So we look at how we can help clients with their ESG strategies and work that comes out of it. But I think probably the more hard-edged legal work currently is in the net zero space. So I'll probably focus on that going forward. But as I say, the scale of the change required to get to net zero is huge, and it touches on all of our clients. And so we really want to help our clients deliver that change and work on the technology and the projects and the investment that's required to deliver it. I think probably the most obvious work is the increase in renewables work. So that's just, what I mean by that is delivering renewable electricity predominantly. And there's been an awful lot of that already. That is a sector which is probably the most decarbonised. But going forward, there's got to be a huge amount more as we use electric vehicles, we heat our houses with heat pumps and so on. There's got to be a massive increase, probably 2 to 3 times the energy system that we had before. And so a lot of work there, and across all sorts of technologies. Not just wind power, but we've got to look at all of the other technologies as well. But there are a couple of other things that come in that space. So there's hydrogen. We've got to develop a whole new hydrogen economy. And that goes from both the producers of hydrogen, so we need projects to produce the hydrogen, but we need to create the market that's going to take that hydrogen, and we need to push those things forward at the same time, because without the market, you're not going to get the producers. Without the producers, you've got no market. And that goes pretty broadly, because it's going to go into the gas grid. We're going to use it for transport. We're going to use it for various other things. So there's a whole piece there that needs to go around, as well as the infrastructure to transport hydrogen around. Another area would be renewable heat, and we're expecting some regulations to come out soon in relation to renewable heat, and that could be the game changer. But even those projects are going forward now, and we're involved in quite a lot of renewable heat projects. And then I suppose just picking another example on a sort of different area is the whole area around sort of carbon credits and offsetting. So as clients are looking to, from their ESG agendas, looking to offset any emissions that they do have, there's a whole market developing in relation to carbon credits, and we're doing an awful lot of work there. And there's change in the legal frameworks going on. So this work comes up, as I say, in lots of different areas and across the whole board. And I think probably just where we found real opportunities is looking at the connections between sectors, because there is no way we can get to net zero without these different sectors working together. So, for example, clients in the built environment need to sort out their renewable energy. Clients in the hydrogen sector needs to engage with the transport sector, and we really look to help our clients in those areas. And we do that by sort of making introductions and so on, but also as the need for new regulations and policy develops, we look to push forward and highlight where there's opportunities and challenges in those areas. So, for example, we've just released a report on energy resilience in industrial and logistics buildings, and that's just an example of where we've taken 2 areas, new area developing, and tried to show how the opportunities come forward from that.
Thank you. And finally, what are the challenges faced by businesses when it comes to implementing environmental initiatives, and any potential solutions?
Yeah, I think there's always challenges with these new areas, particularly where it's so broad. And I think some of them are well understood. So we know there's a significant challenge with grid capacity, and there isn't enough grid capacity for all of this electricity generation that I've been talking about. So we've worked with clients at ways getting around that. So maybe doing private wire arrangements, so you don't have to go through the grid, possibly grid sharing agreements. So there's different ways around it where there is a real constraint there. I think consenting for these projects can be a challenge. I think it's generally recognised that in the UK we have, it's a rigorous, but it's a lengthy process, and that can delay things, and sometimes that can kill projects off. And sometimes, the objections to particular projects may be a real problem, whether the objections are valid or not. So, what we try to do on that is, particularly as an example, we're working in relation to hydrogen, and we've brought out a report on consenting where we see the challenges. We work with the regulators to try and make them understand and just try and highlight where the issues may be going forward. And I think the threat of greenwashing is always there. That's something that's coming up. And I think clients need to be authentic, and they need to be consistent in their messaging. So you need to bring different bits of the organisation together to help with that. And you need really robust contractual structures, particularly in relation to those carbon credits and so on that I was mentioning. And then, as I was saying, a lot of this is new. And so that has a number of implications, really. You know, we may not have policy or detailed regulations that have been developed. And I think one way we can help our clients with that is to understand those areas. And we sit on working groups so that we know where things have got to, and we can help to shape that agenda, and we can make sure that our clients are completely up to date on that. And we can work with the government and regulators to help them move it forward. I also think there's another challenge. For example, in larger organisations, I think I mentioned before, the need to work together. And in a large organisation, you might have different bits of the organisation with different incentives that are actually fighting against each other. So, for example, you might have a renewables project, and the Facilities Estates Department wants to get the most amount of rent for a renewables project on their land. The Energy Department wants to get the lowest price for the energy, and those two things fight each other. And so I think it's recognising that those challenges can arise and helping clients to find their way through it. So there's a lot out there. There's a lot of challenges. There's usually solutions. But I think what I would probably finish by saying is it's a fascinating area. No 2 days are ever the same when you're working in this area, but it's a real opportunity to apply cutting edge knowledge to help clients. And personally, I find it hugely enjoyable.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today and provide some really valuable insights here.
Thank you.